Think the children of illegal aliens should be allowed to attend Texas public schools free, or do you think that their parents should pay for their education?
We're doing two things. We're creating a whole society of really honorable, decent, family-loving people that are in violation of the law, and secondly, we're exacerbating relations with Mexico. The answer to your question is much more fundamental than whether they attend Houston schools, it seems to me. I don't want to see a whole, if they're living here, I don't want to see a whole thing of 6- and 8-year-old kids being made, you know, one totally uneducated and made to feel that they're living with outside the law. Let's address ourselves to the fundamentals. These are good people, strong people. Part of my family is a Mexican.
Can I add to that? Why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and then while they're working and earning here, they pay taxes here. And when they want to go back, they can go back, and they can cross and open the border both ways.
What you just watched was the Republican primary. In 1980, Ronald Reagan would be ruthlessly humiliated for being a woke libtard pussy if someone were to accurately convey his former speeches on immigration, for example. Like, if Ronald Reagan today was alive and was in office and said what he used to say about migrants and what makes America great, he would be to the left of the Democratic Party. And I hate Ronald Reagan. I hate him with my whole heart. I think he is one of the worst politicians, like one of the most damaging, one of the most devastating politicians to have ever existed for the Western world. Okay? Every awful thing in modern American history, you can directly trace back to Ronald Reagan. And even then, if you were to listen to him on immigration, he literally would come across to the left of the Democratic Party, not just the Republican Party, to the left of, I mean, he did amnesty. Ronald Reagan's last speech. This is a famous George W. Bush primary debate. George H.W. and Ronald Reagan debating on immigration in 1980. I want you to understand what the attitudes looked like back then. But also Ronald Reagan's last speech, he delivers remarks on something that a person sent to him by mail to the White House, where he says, all around the world, if you move to France, you cannot become French. If you move to Germany, you cannot become German. If you move to Turkey, you do not become Turkish. The only place around the world, if you move to the United States of America, you become American. That's the only place in the world where you can come here, move here, and become American. And that is what is beautiful about the United States of America. That was his final fucking speech. Yeah, here.
Since this is the last speech that I will give as president, I think it's fitting to leave one final thought, an observation about a country which I love. It was stated best in a letter I received not long ago. A man wrote me and said, you can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go to live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American. Yes, the torch of Lady Liberty symbolizes our freedom and represents our heritage, the compact with our parents, our grandparents, and our ancestors. It is that lady who gives us our great and special place in the world, for it's the great life force of each generation.
He's the devil, bro. How did we move to the right of the devil? How is that possible? Think about how diabolical the average politician is in the United States of America in 2025, that the motherfucking devil's like, yeah, one of the best things about America is that we're a nation of migrants, and that's what truly makes us great. Someone just like, who's this woken gay libtard? He was being sarcastic. No, the fuck he wasn't. Yeah, he sarcastically offered amnesty to millions, dude.
Of new Americans that guarantees that America's triumph shall continue unsurpassed into the next century and beyond. Other countries may seek to compete with us, but in one vital area, as a beacon of freedom and opportunity that draws the people of the world, no country on earth comes close. This, I believe, is one of the most important sources of America's greatness. We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength, from every country and every corner of the world. And by doing so, we continuously renew and enrich our nation. While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America, we breathe life into dreams, we create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we ever closed the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost.
Like, dude, what the fuck are we doing here? Listen. I know it's hard not to reflexively go, oh, if Ronald Reagan liked immigrants like this, then that means immigrants are bad. The point that I'm trying to explain is, don't you find it at all strange that not a significant number of Republicans nowadays are no longer saying that they aspire to be like Reagan? I guarantee it's because they realize he's woke on immigration. No, they still hold him with great respect. They say he's the best. I mean, he is the godfather of this current iteration of the Republican Party. Like, he was not woke at all. He was a fucking unimaginable racist. The difference is, and also the great deregulator, the great union buster, he did it all, okay? He did it all. He is the Republican Party's FDR. What FDR did with the New Deal that brought about the great American prosperity that we're still eating off of, by the way, to this day. If you have any working infrastructure, no matter how bad it is, no matter how crumbling it is, it's literally FDR. Okay, think about how much mileage we got out of that. FDR built the underlying skeleton of American commerce, everything. Ronald Reagan did the exact opposite. He is the great destroyer. If FDR was a great builder, then Ronald Reagan is the great destroyer. He destroyed everything. And just like FDR, the Democrats ate good off of FDR's gains. The attitude surrounding American culture was like more open-minded to social democracy than any kind of like right-wing neoliberalism or anything like that until Ronald Reagan. Carter played a role in this as well, for sure. Every president did. It's always a continuation, one after the next. But like Reagan is the attitude shift. His victory, the victory he presided over, was so vast that it made the Democrats into this fully right-wing, center-right neoliberal party as well. That's precisely the reason why you look at pre-Reagan, right? And you look at like some politicians, no matter how fucking heinous they are, like even Nixon. And there are a lot of things that Nixon did that you would consider to be fucking woke. You'd be like, what the fuck? That guy built the EPA? What are we, crazy? That's insane. What do you mean? What do you mean he did price controls? Like, what? Yeah, why do you think? It's because the democratic forces and the ideology that Democrats fought for was such a domineering force in American politics that Republicans were conceding on those issues. And the same goes for how Democrats have conceded on the unstoppable force of neoliberalism that came from the Reagan era. Yeah, New Deal Democrats held Congress for 40 years up until the 90s. You're warping the neocon viewpoint of immigration that Reagan espoused. The Overton window shift is so dramatic. We're moving into a new era in the Republican Party. Less Ronald Reagan, more Pat Buchanan. That's all I'm saying. The point is that Ronald Reagan was the fucking devil, and even then, there was less hostility towards migrants and more of an understanding that, like, these are people just around us, you know? We got to take care of them somehow. Here, this debate, this back and forth debate will show you. Do you think Reagan was a neolib? Yes, of course. Reagan is the American godfather of neoliberalism, just as Thatcher is in the UK.
My name is David Grossberg, and I'd like to know, do you think the children of illegal aliens should be allowed to attend Texas public schools free, or do you think that their parents should pay for their education?
Who are you addressing that to?
I think you're first in this.
He was looking right at you.
I said he was. Look, I'd like to see something done about the illegal alien problem that would be so sensitive and so understanding about labor needs and human needs that that problem wouldn't come up. But today, if those people are here, I would reluctantly say I think they would get whatever it is that they're, you know, what the society is giving to their neighbors. But the problem has to be solved. The problem has to be solved because as we have kind of made illegal some kinds of labor that I'd like to see legal, we're doing two things. We're creating a whole society of really honorable, decent, family-loving people that are in violation of the law, and secondly, we're exacerbating relations with Mexico. The answer to your question is much more fundamental than whether they attend Houston schools, it seems to me. I don't want to see a whole, if they're living here, I don't want to see a whole thing of 6- and 8-year-old kids being made, you know, one totally uneducated and made to feel that they're living with outside the law. Let's address ourselves to the fundamentals. These are good people, strong people. Part of my family is a Mexican.
Can I add to that? I think the time has come that the United States and our neighbors, particularly our neighbor to the south, should have a better understanding and a better relationship than we've ever had. And I think that we haven't been sensitive enough to our size and our power. They have a problem of 40 to 50% unemployment. Now, this cannot continue without the possibility arising with regard to that other country that we talked about, of Cuba and what it is stirring up, of the possibility of trouble below the border, and we could have a very hostile and strange neighbor on our border. Rather than making them or talking about putting up a fence, why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and then while they're working and earning here, they pay taxes here. And when they want to go back, they can go back, and they can cross and open the border both ways by understanding their problems. This is the only safety valve right now they have with that unemployment that probably keeps the lid from blowing off down there. And I think we could have a fine relationship, and it would solve the problem you mentioned also.
What you just watched was the Republican primary in 1980. Now, time was different. The time was different back then. And part of the reason why they were doing this, obviously, was because they did want a flow of cheaper labor that would displace the domestic labor force. Except not only did we do that, but we also realized broadly that we can just keep them here without proper documentation, and therefore this will be even more beneficial for capital owners, because this way you create a two-tier labor system where you have the replaceable permanent underclass of undocumented migrants, and their very existence threatens the domestic labor force if it hasn't outright displaced it, and their very existence working for pennies on the dollar without any protections whatsoever creates an environment where wages for the domestic labor force also decrease, because disposable labor of this sort makes the domestic labor force also endlessly replaceable. The irony, of course, and I've talked about this a lot, the irony is that America's relationship with immigration has been doubly fucked up. Because in many other countries, like in the UK, a lot of people were frustrated with the Polish migration that was taking place. They were like, oh, these Polish people are coming into our country. They're taking our jobs. Why? Because they were getting higher wages in England as opposed to Poland. More work opportunities in England as opposed to Poland in the same sectors. And that they would, through the currency exchange at times, or at least like with the cost of living back home, they were willing to work for... not the currency issue, but the cost of living back home, they were willing to work for cheaper wages. Not anymore, Lo. I know. We're talking pre-Brexit. For all the Polish out there and for all the British out there, what I'm talking about is an entirely different universe, everybody. This is pre-Brexit, okay? Remember, it's not the case anymore, but that used to be the fucking case. No, not Margaret Thatcher times. Leading up to Brexit, this was a fucking big problem. People were like, oh, why are the fucking Polish coming here taking my construction jobs here? What are you fucking doing? Oh, lad. Right? I mean, they hated the Muslims too, but they also hated they had smoke for the Polish too. So the reason why I'm bringing up The Polish migration, however, is because if you're a plumber in Poland at the time versus a plumber in England coming in from Poland, you could bring home more money. You can bring back more money to your family. So people would choose to migrate. Now, this is the reality of migrant labor forces all around the world. If you have a country that has a higher standard of living or higher costs associated with it, labor force also gets paid higher. Okay? The labor force gets paid higher in comparison to back home. The difference between Mexico and Mexican wages and the difference between America and American wages is stark. This is why there is migration. Okay? Before we even talk about the instability and the other hardships that people go through. So that was one way to create an uneven system that ended up depressing wages for the domestic labor force. But in America, we do it doubly fucked up. Because Americans realized it wasn't just the difference in the currency exchange or the difference in the cost of living associated with like the back home countries where people could come and migrate and work in America for a little bit and then take the money back and send it to their families. America realized, oh my God, there's an even better way to do this. Let's just make them illegal. Let's just make sure that they do not get the proper documentation. And that has been the system in the United States of America for like the past 60 years. Okay? First tried, tested under the Bracero program during World War I and then World War II. Okay? And then completely became a normal part of commodity production in this country for like the last 60 years. It is a great injustice. And it's not just an injustice upon all of the dispossessed masses from around the world that are victims of American imperialism, that are simply seeking out a better life for themselves here on U.S. soil, working for pennies on the dollar, and then being discarded as though they are meaningless, simply to present a political talking point at times, or in other instances, being deported violently because they demanded back pay, for example, right? Like, or demanded a crumb of what they deserve. Endlessly persecuted. But it's also an injustice on the existing domestic labor force as well, because their very existence on U.S. soil, working for pennies on the dollar, is used as a displacement mechanism for the existing domestic labor force. It is basically one step removed from slavery. Okay? It is indentured servitude, you could say. The only difference is it's not that like these are peasants who were victims of colonial occupation. They are the working classes and the masses that are victims of imperialism. And this time, instead of being purposely shipped into the United States of America or into whatever subsequent nation that was practicing indentured servitude, their indentured servitude comes from capitalism. That's how it is. They are victims of empire, they're victims of capitalism, and they are desperate to make ends meet. They're desperate for a better life for themselves and their children, and they come here, they toil the land endlessly, tirelessly, day in, day out, under horrifying conditions. They get paid pennies on the dollar, and then they get discarded. It's slavery, but people like it for some reason. I mean, wage slavery is also slavery, but people like it for some reason as well. This is just it's not as bad as chattel slavery. Nothing is as bad as chattel slavery throughout history. And most historians will tell you two things that the historians have an outright position on, when they rarely ever have a position on historic events, is chattel slavery and the Nazis, right? And genocide. Even some genocide, there is not complete consensus on. Okay? Don't need to compare two bad bitches. Yeah. So I'm not making a comparison between chattel slavery, which is horrifying, right? But this is the modern iteration of indentured servitude. That's what it is. It is indentured servitude. And the way we treat these people is so gross. And what's even crazier is that The thing to do in this circumstance is actually to document them so they can fight alongside the pre-existing labor force, documented labor force, to unionize and to demand more. This would automatically increase wages. This is what a government that's actually invested in improving the wages would do. A government that is disinterested in improving wages, on the other hand, would just simply use the migrants as a talking point over and over again without actually addressing any of these issues that the domestic labor force, the legacy Americans, the folk, if you will, in the original German, instead of addressing any of those concerns, they just build out a common enemy that must be ritualistically humiliated, dehumanized, destroyed. Can you guess which method our administration is currently doing?